I always thought the most painful thing in life was being invisible to my own family. I was wrong. The most painful thing was lying at the bottom of my mother's staircase, blood pooling beneath my head, while my sister stood at the top watching me with cold, satisfied eyes. 3 seconds earlier, her hands had been on my chest. Her voice had been a venomous whisper. "That baby is Mark's, isn't it?" Before I could answer, she pushed. I remember the way each stair slammed into my spine, the crack of my skull against the hardwood floor, the warm wetness spreading through my hair, and above it all, Melissa's voice calm as morning frost. "No one will believe you. Mom already knows you're a liar." I was 3 months pregnant with a baby that wasn't her husband's. I had never touched her husband, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was the secret that would surface at the hospital that night, a secret that would destroy not just Melissa, but the woman who had been pulling her strings all along. Have you ever been punished for a crime you didn't commit? By the people who were supposed to love you. My name is Jennifer Brooks. I'm 34 years old, a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm in Connecticut, and for most of my life, I've been the daughter who did everything right and got nothing in return. I bought my own house at 28. I've never asked my family for a single dollar since I was 22. I built a career, a savings account, a life that any parent should be proud of. But in my family, none of that mattered, because I wasn't Melissa. Growing up, I heard the same words from my mother. So often they became a kind of background music to my childhood. "You're strong, Jennifer. You don't need me. Melissa needs me." I believed her. I made myself strong. I stopped asking for help, for attention, for love, and somewhere along the way, I became invisible. Melissa was 3 years younger, but she was always the center of everything. The pretty one, the delicate one, the one mother rushed to protect. 5 years ago, she married Mark Thompson, a successful attorney with kind eyes and a gentle voice. They looked perfect together. But lately, something had shifted in my sister. She'd been calling me at odd hours, asking strange questions. "Does Mark ever mention me when you two talk? Has he seemed distant to you?" I didn't understand it. Mark and I barely spoke outside of family gatherings. There was only one time we'd spent any real time together, and it was something I never discussed with anyone except my mother. 3 years ago, my ex-boyfriend Kevin had stolen $15,000 from me through a fraudulent investment scheme. I was humiliated. Mark, being a lawyer, offered to help me recover the money quietly. He did, and I was so grateful that I bought him an expensive pen as a thank you. A small gesture, completely innocent. During one of our meetings, Mark had said something that stuck with me. "Be careful around Melissa. She's more fragile than she seems." I thought he was being overprotective. I forgot about it. The night everything began to unravel was a Sunday dinner at my mother's house. I had news I'd been keeping secret for 3 months. I was pregnant. The father was Daniel Morrison, my neighbor. He was 47, a widowed engineer with a quiet laugh and steady hands. We'd been dating for a year, and he was the first man who ever made me feel truly seen. But I hadn't told my family about him. I knew what they'd say. A widower. At his age, couldn't you find someone better? I wasn't ready for their judgment, so when I announced the pregnancy, I kept Daniel's name to myself. The table went silent. No one said congratulations. My mother's first words were, "Who's the father? Why won't you tell us?" Her tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory. Melissa stared at my stomach with an expression I couldn't read, something between fear and fury. After dinner, I saw Mother pull Melissa into the kitchen for a private conversation. I couldn't hear what they said, but when Melissa came out, her face was pale. As I gathered my things to leave, Melissa grabbed my arm. Her grip was too tight. Her eyes were wild, searching my face for something I didn't understand. "That pen you gave Mark," she whispered. "I found it in his drawer last week. He still has it. Why would he keep it after all this time? Unless it meant something." My blood ran cold. I had never told Melissa about that pen. I had only ever mentioned it to one person, my mother. The 2 weeks after that dinner were the strangest of my life. Melissa called me every single day, sometimes twice. Her questions were never direct, but they circled the same territory over and over. "Did you see Mark this week? Has he mentioned anything about me? Where were you Tuesday afternoon?" I answered honestly every time, but my answers never seemed to satisfy her. She would go quiet, then change the subject, then hang up abruptly. I told myself she was stressed. I told myself marriage was hard. I didn't understand what was really happening. What I didn't know was that my mother was calling Melissa even more often than Melissa was calling me. Every day, sometimes multiple times, Mother would check in with her favorite daughter, and every conversation planted another seed of poison. I drove past Mark's office yesterday, and I could have sworn I saw Jennifer's car in the parking lot. She still won't tell anyone who the father of that baby is. Don't you think that's suspicious? I'm not saying anything happened between them, sweetheart, but a mother notices things. None of it was true. I hadn't been anywhere near Mark's office, but Melissa didn't know that. All she knew was that her own mother, the woman she trusted most in the world, was telling her that something was wrong. Melissa started losing sleep. She started checking Mark's phone when he was in the shower. She started driving past my house at odd hours, looking for his car. She was spiraling, and I had no idea. The only sign I noticed was when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, mentioned that a woman matching Melissa's description had come by my house while I was at work. She just stood on the sidewalk for a while, staring at your windows, Mrs. Patterson said. Then she got back in her car and drove away. A chill ran through me, but I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe Melissa had wanted to drop something off and changed her mind. Then came the email. Mark had sent me a perfectly innocent message. He wanted to return some old case files from the Kevin situation 3 years ago, documents he'd kept in storage and recently found while cleaning out his office. He also mentioned that he was worried about Melissa. She's been acting strange lately, he wrote. Distant, paranoid. Has she said anything to you? Can we talk? It was the kind of message any concerned husband might send to his sister-in-law, but it never reached only me. My mother had always insisted on keeping what she called a master list of family passwords. In case of emergencies, she'd said, what if something happens and we need to access your accounts? Years ago, when Mark joined the family, she'd convinced him to add his email password to the list. He'd probably forgotten about it entirely, but Mother hadn't forgotten. She logged into his email, found the message to me, and forwarded it to Melissa with a single subject line, "Thought you should see this." No commentary, no explanation. Just the email with its damning phrases, worried about Melissa and can we talk? To a woman already drowning in suspicion, those words were proof of everything she feared. Her husband and her sister were conspiring against her. They were having an affair. The baby was his. Everything made sense now. Melissa read that email, and something inside her snapped completely. I knew none of this when my mother called me that Sunday morning. Her voice was warm and casual. I found some old baby clothes in the attic, she said. Things from when you and Melissa were little. I thought you might want them for the new baby. Why don't you come by this afternoon and pick them up? It seemed like a kind gesture. For one foolish moment, I thought maybe my mother was finally trying to connect with me to show some excitement about her grandchild. I said yes. But something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it, just a heaviness in my chest, a whisper of warning I couldn't quite hear. I remembered Mark's words from 3 years ago. Be careful around Melissa. She's more fragile than she seems. I remembered my sister's wild eyes at the dinner, her grip on my arm, her question about the pen. I remembered Mrs. Patterson mentioning the woman standing outside my house, and I made a decision that would end up saving everything. Before I left, I opened the voice memo app on my phone and pressed record. I slipped the phone into my jacket pocket with the microphone facing up. If something happens, I thought I need proof. It felt paranoid, it felt dramatic, but I did it anyway. I also called Daniel to let him know where I was going. The call connected, but just as he answered, I got distracted looking for my keys. I said a quick hello, mentioned I was heading to my mother's house, and then set the phone down without hanging up. The call stayed active. Daniel could hear everything. When I arrived at my mother's house, she greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Come in, sweetheart. The clothes are upstairs. Melissa's here, too. She wanted to help you sort through everything. Before I could respond, Mother grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I just need to run to the pharmacy quickly. I'll be back in 15 minutes. You two go ahead and start without me. She was gone before I could say a word. The house fell silent. I climbed the stairs slowly, my hand trailing along the banister. Something felt wrong. The air was too still. My heart was beating too fast. When I reached the top of the staircase, Melissa was waiting for me. She stood in the hallway, blocking my path. Her arms crossed over her chest. Her face was pale and her eyes were red-rimmed, like she hadn't slept in days. But beneath the exhaustion, there was something else. Rage. "I know," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I know about you and Mark. The emails, the secret meetings. That baby you're carrying, it's his, isn't it?" "Melissa, what are you talking about?" I took a step backward toward the stairs. Don't lie to me." She moved closer, her hands shaking. "I saw the email. Can we talk? Worried about Melissa. You've been laughing at me this whole time. Both of you." "There's nothing between me and Mark. The baby isn't his. Melissa, please, you have to listen to me." But she wasn't listening. Her eyes dropped to my stomach and something twisted in her face. Before I could react, her hands shot out and shoved me hard in the chest. I lost my balance, my foot slipped on the top stair, and then I was falling. I remember every stair. I remember the way my shoulder cracked against the railing, the way my head bounced off the hardwood, the way my body crumpled at the bottom like a broken doll. I remember lying there, unable to move, feeling something warm and wet spreading through my hair. And I remember looking up to see Melissa standing at the top of the stairs, staring down at me with cold, empty eyes. "No one will believe you," she said. Her voice was calm now, almost peaceful. "Mom already knows you're a liar." 5 minutes later, my mother walked through the front door. Her timing was perfect. Too perfect. She saw me on the floor, blood pooling beneath my head, and her face arranged itself into an expression of shock. But her eyes were calm, calculating. She pulled out her phone and called 911. Then she turned to Melissa and spoke quickly. "Tell them she tripped. You tried to catch her, but you couldn't reach her in time. Do you understand?" Melissa nodded. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them I had heard everything, but the darkness was already pulling me under. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. A doctor was standing over me, frowning at a clipboard. She looked up and met my eyes. "Miss Brooks," she said quietly, "these wounds aren't consistent with a fall. There's clear evidence of force applied from behind. I'm legally required to report this to the police." My phone was still in my jacket pocket. The voice memo had been recording for 47 minutes. The doctor's words hung in the air like a verdict. She knew I hadn't fallen. The evidence was written across my body in bruises and blood. She explained it to me carefully while a nurse checked my vitals. The pattern of bruising on my back indicated force applied from behind. The angle of my injuries suggested I had been pushed, not tripped. There were defensive wounds on my arms where I had tried to protect myself during the fall. Everything pointed to assault. And because I was pregnant, because my unborn child had also been endangered, the hospital was legally required to report the incident to police. For the first time since I had woken up in that bed, I felt something other than pain. I felt hope. The police arrived within the hour. 2 detectives, a man and a woman, both with notepads and calm professional expressions. They asked me what happened, and for the first time in my life, I told the complete truth about my family. I didn't minimize. I didn't make excuses. I didn't protect Melissa or my mother. I told them about the dinner, about Melissa's strange behavior, about the accusation at the top of the stairs. I told them exactly what my sister had said before she pushed me, and then I reached into my jacket pocket, which someone had hung on the back of a chair, and I pulled out my phone. "I recorded everything," I said. 47 minutes. It's all there." The detectives exchanged a glance. The woman took my phone carefully like it was made of glass. She said they would need to extract the audio through their forensics department, but if what I was saying was true, this recording would be crucial evidence. They left with my phone and a promise to return. I lay back against the pillow and closed my eyes. My head was throbbing. My body ached in places I didn't know could ache, but the baby was still alive. The doctors had confirmed a heartbeat. My child had survived what my sister tried to do to us. That was all that mattered. The next morning, my mother and Melissa tried to visit. I heard them at the nurse's station, my mother's voice raised in indignation. "I'm her mother. You can't keep me from seeing my own daughter." But I had already spoken to hospital security. I had given them explicit instructions, no contact with either of them. No phone calls transferred to my room. No visitors from my family, period. When the security guard turned them away, I felt a weight lift from my chest. For 34 years, I had bent myself into shapes trying to earn their love. That was over now. I called Daniel. He answered on the first ring, his voice rough with worry. He had heard everything through the phone. My arrival at the house, the argument at the top of the stairs, the fall, the ambulance sirens. He had been calling my phone for hours, trying to reach me, desperate to know if I was alive. I told him everything. I told him about Melissa's accusation about the affair she believed I was having with Mark about the baby she thought wasn't his. "She's wrong," I said. "About all of it. Daniel, you're the father. You've always been the only one." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm coming. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Jennifer, I'm not leaving your side again." True to his word, Daniel arrived and didn't leave. He slept in the chair beside my bed. He brought me food from the cafeteria and held my hand when the headaches got bad. And when my mother called my room phone, somehow he was the one who answered. I could hear her voice through the receiver, sharp and demanding. "Let me speak to my daughter. This is a family matter. It doesn't concern you." Daniel's response was calm and firm. "I am the father of her child. I am the one who's actually protecting her. Don't call again." He hung up before she could respond. I made decisions that week that I never would have made before. I contacted a personal injury attorney, not Mark, even though he was family. I wanted complete independence. I wanted someone who had no ties to my mother or Melissa, someone whose only loyalty was to me. The attorney, a woman named Sandra Chen, listened to my story and agreed to take my case. She said the recording alone was powerful evidence, but we needed to address Melissa's accusation directly. If she was claiming the baby was Mark's, we needed to prove definitively that it wasn't. I agreed to a prenatal paternity test, a procedure called NIPP, that could determine the father's identity through a simple blood draw. It was safe for the baby. The results would take about a week. Those 7 days felt like a lifetime. The police forensics team extracted the audio from my phone and confirmed its authenticity. The recording was clear. You could hear Melissa's accusation, "That baby is his, isn't it?" You could hear my denial. You could hear the sound of the push, my body tumbling down the stairs, the crack of my head against the floor. And you could hear Melissa's cold voice saying, "No one will believe you. Mom already knows you're a liar." But that wasn't all. The recording had kept running. It captured my mother walking through the door. It captured her voice, low and urgent, coaching Melissa on what to say. "Tell them she tripped. You tried to catch her, but you couldn't reach her in time." I had evidence of assault. I had evidence of conspiracy to cover it up. For the first time in this nightmare, I had power. The DNA results came back on a Thursday morning. Daniel Morrison was the father of my child with a 99.99% probability match. Mark Thompson was definitively excluded. There was no affair. There never had been. Melissa's entire accusation was built on lies and paranoia. When the police interviewed Mark as part of their investigation, he provided testimony that changed everything. He told them that Melissa had been in therapy for 3 years for severe anxiety and jealousy issues. He told them about her obsessive behaviors, her constant need for reassurance, her irrational fears about other women. Because Melissa had been charged with a violent crime and her mental state was directly relevant to the case, the court granted a limited subpoena for her therapy records. Those records documented something chilling: intrusive thoughts about perceived threats, and a pattern of fixating on her sister specifically. But Mark said something else during his interview, something that made the detectives pause. "My mother-in-law calls Melissa every day," he said, "multiple times sometimes. She's always telling Melissa things about Jennifer, things that make Melissa upset. I've overheard some of the calls. I should have said something sooner, but I didn't realize how bad it had gotten." The police noted this detail, but they didn't yet understand its full significance. I filed formal assault charges against Melissa. She was arrested and released on bail with a no-contact order. The case was moving forward. Then came the interrogation. I wasn't there, but my attorney told me what happened. The detectives played the recording for Melissa. They let her listen to her own voice, her own words, her own cruelty, captured forever on audio. When she heard herself say, "Mom already knows you're a liar," something shifted in her face. The defiance crumbled, the certainty dissolved, and she whispered something that changed everything. "Mom told me Jennifer was lying. Mom showed me the emails. Mom said she saw them together. The detective leaned forward. Your mother showed you emails. Tell me everything. The detective's question opened a door that could never be closed again. Over the following 2 months, Melissa told them everything. Every phone call, every whispered concern, every seed of doubt that our mother had planted in her mind over 6 months of careful, deliberate manipulation. Under questioning, my sister's certainty crumbled like wet paper. She showed police her phone, her text messages, the hundreds of conversations with our mother that had slowly driven her to madness. The detectives read through them all. Messages like, I saw Jennifer's car near Mark's office again today, and she's hiding something about that baby, I just know it, and a mother can always tell when something isn't right. But one message stood out above all the others. It was sent the morning of the attack, just hours before I arrived at the house. It read, Jennifer is coming today. This is your chance to get the truth. I'll give you privacy. Our mother had known exactly what would happen. She had arranged it. I was 5 months pregnant by then, my body finally healing from the fall. The bruises had faded, the headaches had stopped, but every week brought new revelations that wounded me in ways no physical injury ever could. Digital forensics examined Melissa's devices and traced the email that had pushed her over the edge. The message from Mark, the one about returning case files and being worried about Melissa, hadn't been discovered by my sister at all. It had been forwarded to her from our mother's phone. Mother had kept that master password list for years, and she had never forgotten Mark's email login. She had accessed his account, found a perfectly innocent message, and weaponized it against her own daughters. But that wasn't the worst of it. When police examined our mother's phone and email accounts, they found something that made even the detectives pause. In her drafts folder, deleted but recoverable, were fake messages. Romantic messages written as if they were from me to Mark. Love letters I had never written. Confessions of an affair that had never happened. She had composed them carefully, saving them as backup ammunition in case Melissa needed more convincing. Our mother hadn't just enabled my sister's paranoia. She had engineered it from the very beginning. She had built a bomb out of lies and aimed it directly at me. The investigation expanded beyond anything I had imagined. Local news picked up the story, and that coverage brought forward a witness I never expected. Her name was Mrs. Delgado, and she had lived next door to us when I was a child. She was retired now, living in Florida, but she saw the news report and called the police immediately. She had something to tell them, something she had kept to herself for 20 years. When Jennifer was 14, she told the detectives, I saw what really happened with that bicycle. I was in my garden, and I had a clear view of their driveway. Melissa pushed her sister off that bike, pushed her hard right onto the pavement. Jennifer broke her arm. Their mother was standing right there. She saw the whole thing. Mrs. Delgado's voice was steady as she continued. But when the ambulance came, the mother told everyone Jennifer had fallen on her own. She said Jennifer was careless. And then later I heard her yelling at Jennifer for upsetting Melissa. She punished the wrong child. I should have said something back then. I've regretted staying silent ever since. When my attorney told me about Mrs. Delgado's testimony, I couldn't speak. I just sat there looking down at my left arm, at the faint scar I had carried for 2 decades. I had always believed I fell. I had always believed it was my fault for being careless. But I hadn't fallen. I was pushed. Just like at the staircase. Just like every time Melissa felt threatened by my existence. And my mother had witnessed it, covered it up, and punished me for being the victim. I had spent 20 years carrying evidence of her betrayal on my own skin without even knowing it. Based on all the evidence, the district attorney filed charges against my mother. Reckless endangerment, because she knew Melissa was in a volatile mental state and deliberately created conditions for a dangerous confrontation. Obstruction of justice, because she made false statements to police and coached Melissa on what to say. Evidence tampering, because of those deleted email drafts. My mother, the woman who raised me, who I had spent my entire life trying to please, was formally charged with crimes. Given her age, her first offense status, and the nonviolent nature of the charges, her attorney negotiated a plea agreement. She would not go to prison. But she received 2 years of probation, a $15,000 fine, 300 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling. The court made her admit publicly and on record what she had done. The devoted mother, the pillar of the community, the woman who had always positioned herself as the victim of ungrateful children, was exposed as a manipulator who had spent decades pitting her daughters against each other. Her reputation, the thing she valued most in the world, was destroyed. I asked my attorney to show me everything. Every text message, every email, every piece of evidence they had collected. I needed to see it for myself. I needed to understand the full scope of what had been done to me. Sandra warned me it would be painful, but I insisted. So she brought me a folder, thick with printouts, and I sat in my living room with Daniel beside me, and I read through my mother's campaign of destruction. I read the lies she had told Melissa. I read the fake evidence she had manufactured. I read the timeline of manipulation that stretched back not weeks, not months, but years. And something inside me broke apart and reformed into something new. I finally understood the truth. I was never not good enough. I was never the problem. I had been systematically undermined by the person who was supposed to protect me. Every time I succeeded, my mother had found a way to diminish it. Every time I reached for happiness, she had poisoned it. The competition between me and Melissa, the constant comparison, the feeling that I could never measure up, none of it was real. It was manufactured. It was a cage built by my own mother, and I had lived inside it for 34 years without ever seeing the bars. I told Sandra I wanted both of them prosecuted. Melissa for what she did to me, my mother for making her do it. Sandra asked if I was sure. Family cases were complicated, she said. There would be pressure to settle to keep things quiet to protect the family name. I looked at her and said, I spent 34 years thinking something was wrong with me. There wasn't. There was something wrong with them. And I am done protecting people from the consequences of their own actions. Sandra nodded. She understood. The day before the court hearing, a letter arrived at my house. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Melissa. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter was short, just a few lines written in my sister's neat script. I know you'll never forgive me, she wrote. I'm not asking you to, but there's something you need to know. Something Mom made me swear never to tell you. It's about Dad. About why he really left when you were 6. I kept her secrets my whole life, and look where it got me. I won't carry her lies anymore. Ask her about the custody battle. Ask her what she threatened to do if he didn't disappear. You deserve to know the truth. I read the letter 3 times. Then I set it down on the table and stared at nothing. My father had left when I was 6 years old. I barely remembered him. My mother had always said he abandoned us, that he didn't love us enough to stay, that we were better off without him. I had believed her. I had spent my whole life believing her. But now I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Another secret, another lie. How deep did this go? How much of my life had been built on foundations my mother had poisoned from the very start? The morning before the court hearing, I asked my attorney to arrange a meeting with Melissa. Supervised, of course. Both our lawyers present. No physical contact. But I needed to hear the truth about our father before I faced the judge, before I closed this chapter forever. Sandra thought I was making a mistake. Daniel worried it would upset me too much in my condition. I was 8 months pregnant by then, my belly huge, my back aching, my emotions raw and unpredictable. But I insisted. I had spent my entire life believing lies. I deserved to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. We met in a conference room at the courthouse. Melissa looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. The confidence she had always worn like armor was gone. She sat across from me with her hands folded on the table, her eyes red and swollen. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Dad didn't abandon you, she said. That's the first thing you need to know. He didn't leave because he didn't love you. He left because he loved you too much. I felt my heart stop. Melissa continued her words, tumbling out like she had been holding them back for years. When you were 6, Dad tried to get custody of you. Just you. He saw how Mom treated you differently. He knew something was wrong. He wanted to take you away from her to protect you. She paused, swallowing hard. Mom found out. She threatened him. She said if he didn't leave quietly and give up his parental rights, she would accuse him of abuse. She would drag you through court. She would make you testify against your own father. He couldn't do that to you. So he disappeared. He let everyone think he abandoned us so that you wouldn't have to go through that nightmare. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Melissa kept talking, her voice breaking. He died 8 years ago. Cancer. Mom knew. She went to the funeral without telling either of us. She came home and never said a word. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't wipe them away. I found out when I was 18, Melissa said. Mom and I had a terrible fight, and she let it slip. She made me swear never to tell you. She said if you knew the truth, you would hate her. She said it would destroy our family." A bitter laugh escaped my sister's throat, as if she hadn't already destroyed it herself. "I should have told you years ago, Jennifer. I should have told you the moment I found out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." I sat there in silence for a long moment, processing what I had just heard. My father had tried to save me. He had loved me enough to sacrifice his relationship with me rather than put me through trauma. And my mother had used that love against him just like she had used Melissa's insecurity against me. Everything I thought I knew about my childhood was wrong. But strangely beneath the grief and the anger, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Someone had loved me. Someone had seen how I was being treated and had tried to rescue me. I wasn't invisible to everyone. I had just been hidden from the one person who saw me clearly. That knowledge didn't erase the pain, but it changed something fundamental inside me. I had been loved, even if I never knew it. The court hearing began an hour later. Melissa stood before the judge and pleaded guilty to assault causing bodily harm. Her defense attorney presented evidence of our mother's manipulation not to excuse what Melissa had done, but to explain how a sister could become capable of such violence. The judge listened carefully. She acknowledged that Melissa had been exploited by a master manipulator, that her mental state had been deliberately destabilized, that she had been used as a weapon against her own family. But she also held Melissa accountable for her choices. No amount of manipulation could excuse pushing a pregnant woman down a flight of stairs. The sentence was firm but measured. 18 months suspended, meaning Melissa would serve no prison time unless she violated her probation. 200 hours of community service. $35,000 in restitution for my medical bills and emotional damages, a 5-year restraining order prohibiting any contact with me, and mandatory psychiatric treatment to address the anxiety and jealousy, issues that had made her so vulnerable to our mother's influence. Before the judge moved on, Melissa asked permission to make a statement. She turned to face me, her eyes wet, her voice steady. "I hurt my sister because I believed lies I should have questioned," she said. "I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just want Jennifer to know that I see the truth now. I see what Mom did to both of us, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of being called her sister, even if she never speaks to me again." Then it was my mother's turn. She sat at the defense table with her expensive lawyer, her face carefully composed, her posture rigid. She had pleaded guilty as part of her deal, but even now, even facing the consequences of her actions, she showed no remorse. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically. The text messages, the forwarded email, the fake love letters she had drafted as backup ammunition, the 20-year pattern of pitting her daughters against each other, the bicycle incident that Mrs. Delgado had witnessed, the threats she had made to my father. By the time the prosecutor finished, the judge's face was stone. She called my mother's behavior calculated, cruel, and deeply disturbing. She said she had rarely seen such a systematic campaign of emotional destruction within a family. The sentence followed the plea agreement: 2 years probation, a $15,000 fine, 300 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent public record. My mother would not go to prison. But as she left the courthouse that day, she left alone. No friends waiting to support her, no family members offering comfort. The relatives who had always admired her devoted motherhood now saw the truth. She had spent decades building a reputation as the perfect mother, and in one day it had all crumbled to dust. A reporter caught me outside the courthouse. She asked how I felt about the verdicts. I thought for a moment before answering. "I don't feel victorious," I said. "I feel free. For 34 years, I believed I wasn't good enough. I believed I was the problem, that something was fundamentally wrong with me. I believed it because my own mother made me believe it. What she did to me, to my father, to Melissa, turning her into a weapon, it was all wrong. Justice happened today, but revenge isn't what I'm looking for. I just want to move forward." I placed my hand on my belly, feeling my daughter kick. Now I'm going home to prepare for my little girl. 8 months later, Emma celebrated her first birthday. She was healthy, happy, and surrounded by more love than I ever received in my entire childhood. Daniel and I had gotten married quietly at the courthouse 2 months after she was born, with just a few close friends as witnesses. Our home was small but warm. Our family was tiny but real. I hadn't spoken to my mother or Melissa since the trial. Melissa had written 4 letters over the past year. I kept them unopened in a drawer. Maybe someday I would read them. Maybe someday I would be ready to consider forgiveness. But not yet. My mother hadn't written at all. According to relatives, she still insisted she had done nothing wrong. On Emma's birthday, after the small party was over and the guests had gone home, I sat down with her baby book. I had been filling it out for months, documenting every milestone, every smile, every precious moment. But tonight I wrote something different. You were born from love, not obligation, I wrote. You came into a family that chose each other. I will never make you earn my love. I will never make you feel invisible. You are seen. You are enough. You always will be. I closed the book and looked out the window. Daniel was in the backyard, assembling a swing set for Emma to grow into. She was napping in her crib, peaceful and safe. The house was quiet. So this is what peace feels like, I whispered. I picked up my phone and opened the voice memo app, the same app that had saved my life. I pressed record and spoke softly. Note to self. Today I chose to be happy. Tomorrow I will choose it again. That's all healing is, one choice at a time. I stopped. The recording smiled and walked outside to help Daniel with the swing. I never needed my mother's approval. I just needed to stop asking for it. Jennifer's story reminds us of a painful truth. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who were supposed to love us unconditionally. Family bonds can be beautiful, but they can also become chains that trap us in cycles of manipulation and abuse. If you recognize yourself in Jennifer's experience, if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been the scapegoat while someone else was the golden child, please hear this. There was never anything wrong with you. You were not too difficult or too demanding. You were simply dealing with people incapable of giving you the love you deserved. The most powerful lesson from this story is that healing begins when we stop seeking approval from those who will never give it. Jennifer spent 34 years trying to earn her mother's love. She only found peace when she stopped asking for it. That is not giving up. That is choosing yourself. It takes tremendous courage to walk away from toxic family members and set boundaries. But sometimes walking away is the only path to survival. Remember, you cannot control how others treat you, but you can control how long you allow it to continue. You deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, and genuine care. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. We share stories like this every week, stories of strength, justice, and women who refuse to stay silent. Drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever had to distance yourself from a toxic family member? How did you find the courage to put yourself first? Your experience might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are enough exactly as you are.